Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Today, our special guest is William Grant, and William Grant is the co-founder of Sun Collectors. And you know what, William? There's a lot of people that are listening to this podcast right now that are kind of into collecting sun. It's kind of neat to capture photons and do cool stuff with them. We're kind of doing future stuff almost compared to the way people were doing things not too long ago with this industry. And so how are you collecting those photons, pieces of light?
Through the solar panels, through the PN junctions, and then getting that power across the path. It's funny they mentioned that. So I used to be an electrical engineer before I started running a solar company and the sales and install side of things. So one of the things we ran into originally was, or at least I did, was over-explaining solar panels to potential homeowners, right? Because I don't necessarily care about the PN junctions and how everything works, but I'm glad to see that somebody else knows in the industry how solar actually works.
Yeah, well, that's my job. And I kind of think it's cool to know stuff, I think that being smart is cool. And sometimes people fake it and they act like they're not smart, but then they really are too. So I kind of try to be like that and just kind of goof around and be silly. Like when I was in high school, people used to think I was Jeff Spicoli, and then they were like, they didn't know that I was taking physics classes at the same time, but just messing around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hear you there.
And so, so the PN junction, that's where you get a piece of light. It's called a photon. It's the semiconductor. And then the electron gets set over on the inside of the PN junction. And then it goes around, it'll go through an inverter or something like that, some sort of place where you take the electricity out of it. And then it goes and does a big old circuit. And so that's kind of cool, like PN junctions and all that kind of stuff. So you went from being an electrical engineer to running a solar company.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a journey between here and there, but yeah, when I got out of engineering, I was making like 72,000 on paper. My degree was in with the focus on renewable energy, and my goal was to set up sustainable energy systems for developing countries so they could set up infrastructure and have what they need. And I ended up finding myself behind a desk and doing circuit analytics. And I was okay. It was fine. After coming from where I came from to making 72 a year, that was awesome. And I met a guy at a music festival, which is the co-founder of Sun Collectors as well. And ended up figuring out that he was making a lot more money selling solar in Colorado and explaining it to the average folk than I was as an engineer. So I sold my car, and 2 weeks later moved across the country and started knocking on doors and talking to people about solar.
So everybody listen to that. You got to go to more music festivals.
Very, very true.
Because that will help you follow your dream.
Yeah, some of my best friends, some of the best people I've ever met in this world come from music festivals.
Yeah, I'm going to see a show tomorrow called Grateful Drag.
Grateful Drag, okay. A little spin-off, a little burlesque Grateful Dead show.
Yeah, something like that. I guess apparently there was some, a Dead cover band, I think. I think they were called Bertha, from what I read. And then there was, I think it was Louisiana, and they had some anti-gay law. And so out of protest, they dressed in drag. And then they had, their attendance was way more than usual. And so they just said, hey, we should do more of this. I think maybe that's, I've never seen them before or anything like that. So I don't know, I thought it would be fun bringing my daughter. But yeah, music festivals. What was the music festival?
Bonnaroo out in Manchester, Tennessee.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
And then you're in Colorado now?
No, so that's where we started up. We actually ended up moving to Vegas and trying to start a solar company there, but the market was super saturated 7-8 years ago, and they've been harassed from anything from pests to lighting to anything else. And so it was just a hard market to tap into, and we did a ton of market research around the country, and so it landed us on Illinois.
Oh, great.
There was the SREC incentive. I don't know how much you know about the Illinois Shines, the SREC program they have here. But yeah, we were here a month after that program started up, after the Clean Energy Act got passed in 2019. And, we're now the oldest standing solar company in Central Illinois. There are a couple electrical contracting companies that have started doing solar after the fact. But as far as just a solar company, yeah, we're the oldest.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. I'm kind of surprised because I know there's a lot of solar happening in Illinois that there's not, older companies and things like that. So I've done a lot of work for the Carpenters Union over there out of Chicago. I have a really good relationship with that organization.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've done quite a few classes and things over there in the Chicago area. And so you said the SREC program, maybe you
Mhm.
could help explain it a little bit so people know what's going on over there in Illinois with SRECs,
Absolutely.
solar renewable energy certificates.
Correct. Yep. So essentially what they do is they prepay you for 15 years of your production up front. They hold back a little bit of collateral. And then depending on the design of the system, they'll actually hold back a little bit extra collateral if they're not necessarily sure on if it's actually going to produce that much or not as far as the production in kilowatt hours. And at the end of the day, the program and its design is a beautiful thing. They learned a lot from California. They learned a lot from other states have implemented programs like this, and they really wanted to make sure it was policed properly. And I'm not a big fan of the word policing in most general respects, but within the solar industry, I think we need it. And I know you've been around for a while, so you've seen the good and the bad and the ugly with it. And unfortunately, what we're running into now is a cascading effect of the federal tax credit ending and all these other companies kind of just coming in and not knowing how the programs work, not knowing what needs to be done. And, we're running into that problem again in the industry where a lot of people are over promising and under delivering on the sales side of things. And I'm seeing every day where some new name pops up or some group chat where somebody's trying to get somebody to install systems. The electrical license you need in Peoria it's very hard to get, and it doesn't reciprocate with other places, even including Chicago. So there's only so many installers that actually can do those projects out here. So we're running into a bit of a headache, 6.5 years after the program's been started. But yeah, it's been a fun ride, just like the whole industry. The solar roller coaster is still there.
So that's kind of interesting too. I was just thinking with the SRECs,
Hmm.
you're getting 15 years of performance up front approximately. So
Hmm.
somehow the government entity or whoever's administering the SREC has to make sure that you're not lying.
Yep.
And that might be kind of tough in the first place. But also, once you do something like that, the customer's going to see it
Hmm.
and see that it's approved by a government organization like that. And so it would be harder for some fly by night company that's dishonest to be lying to you because they would have a lot of trouble, pulling the wool over the eyes of the entity administering the SRECs.
True, but if you don't follow the rules, I just saw the other day somebody signed somebody up for a lease, which the leases just got allowed like 3 years ago in the state of Illinois, and they were putting in a group chat on Facebook, how do I get the SREX for this person? I'm like, well, the person's never going to get it. So the guy's still sitting down at the table saying, hey, you're going to get this chunk of money, but at the end of the day, the company is going to collect that. And maybe the back end of the process is going to be a little bit more complicated by the fly-by-night companies, but on the front end customer-facing side, just to step back a second, Peoria, Illinois is a very close-knit community. We're one person disconnected from every single person who lives here. There's 200,000 people in the surrounding area. As far as around a 60-mile radius, there might be 500,000 to a little bit over that. And so when a customer feels that and experiences that, we're seeing a lot of that on companies that started projects a month ago and are promising them they were going to be installed and approved and turned on and have PTO to get the tax credit by the end of the year. Most of these people are never going to get installed. So they're going to lose that tax credit. And then what did you do to that customer? You burn them. You made solar the worst case scenario in their minds. And we're experiencing quite a bit of that around our area, unfortunately. And so the front end of it, and maybe the fulfillment's not there yet for their company or whatever, but the state can't step in and police everybody as they're just coming in troves.
But it would probably be hard to fake it and say that you're making more and then they give you the SREC for when you're not really doing it, or would it be easy to fake it?
In my experience, so, obviously in the solar industry, you have power purchase agreement, ownership, and leasing. We've been around for over 6.5 years and only done ownership because in our market, with the Illinois incentives, the Ameren rebates, and the tax credit, most people, when we first started out, were getting 75% of their system subsidized. Now they're getting, anywhere from 50 to 60% of it subsidized, depending on the incentives that they take and how big of the system and output. So what you run into is a bunch of people have switched to leasing, and we don't believe in leasing because you're getting so much of it subsidized as the homeowner. We're proving the value when their home sells. We have realtors we partner with, we have appraisers we partner with. And so when you're talking about a lease, I know personally that you can go out and sell a lease in 15 minutes. Hey, no money up front. We own the system. Here's your power bill. Here's the lease payment. I'm going to promise you it's going to do 100% of your power. Sign here on the dotted line. And that's as easy as a conversation as it can. It shouldn't be that way, but they can make it that way just to get, ink on paper. And that's just something that we experience quite often. Our consultations that we sit down with people with the ownership, whether it be a business, a homeowner, big, small, doesn't matter what size of the system, ground mount, our consultations take anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours. We really want to make sure that everybody has the right information to move forward and make the best decision for themselves and their family and not put themselves in a position where they're stuck with something for long term.
Great, great. Okay, good. And so Peoria, I know I've heard of Peoria. I didn't realize that it was such a small town.
Mhm.
Is that where Wayne and Garth are from? You know what I'm talking about?
That I do not know. That's not a fun fact I have found out yet. I do have a bunch of fun facts about Peoria, but that is not one of them.
Okay, I don't know why I know about Peoria. I thought maybe it was like the Wayne's World place or
Yeah.
something like that.
That would be hilarious. I think if that was the case, I would probably know about it by now because
Uh-huh.
even just you talking about going to a Grateful Dead show,
Uh-huh.
I think I would have figured that out. But
Uh-huh.
there is a cool concept here in Peoria. It's called If It Plays in Peoria. It's kind of like the slogan. So Broadway used to be here, and they would try out plays because the demographic's so unique here. They would try out things. Same thing with McDonald's, KFC, restaurants, industries. They will try stuff out in this area because it's so diverse and it's hard to tap into just to see if it'll work for the common man around the US.
And that's kind of interesting how, I mean, you're an engineer and then now you're like run a business. And it's
Mhm.
kind of actually, that's a good recipe for somebody that's just like getting started with their life is to get an
Mhm.
engineering degree and a business degree. Like a
Mhm.
lot of times people, doctors, whatever, they end up running a business and they know nothing about it. And so it's good to understand how to run a business and to tie that together with like being an engineer. That's like
Mhm.
super awesome. So, how was it for you transitioning? I guess some people too are just like naturally born good at business too.
Mhm.
You'll see some people that didn't even go to college and they're like billionaires and things like that
Right.
because they might have been grown up some farmer wheeling and dealing in tractors and just one thing leads to another. So, how was your experience like transitioning to being a business owner?
Great question. So my experience is quite unique. I grew up very, very tough. I went to 22 schools for the seventh grade.
Wow.
Mother was a drug addict. Father was an alcoholic Marine. My grandmother always took us in, and I ended up taking care of my grandmother throughout college. And what drove me was to provide a better life for my grandmother. I was very much so in the ghetto of Rockingham, North Carolina, had bullets fly through our windows, gang violence everywhere. And it was a very hard life to live, but I made a promise to myself at a very young age I was going to take care of my grandmother. And it didn't necessarily mean that I was going to be an engineer or this, that, and the other. I just knew I wanted to provide a better life for her. And so what ended up happening is I got my engineering degree, still taking care of her full time. And then the opportunity of more money and more promise and the American dream to go out to Colorado and make more to be able to provide a better life for her. So I'm not an extrovert by any means by nature. I'm much more an introvert. So I see things as numbers and calculations and just figuring out what the path of least resistance to get to where we need to go on a moral high ground is, for lack of a better way to put it. But yeah, so it was an interesting transition, especially going from being an engineer sitting behind a desk and doing analytics all day to then going to knock on doors and talk to people about what they could understand. But my drive and my fight, and to add a little bit to what you were saying about the business and then the engineering, you got to be hard headed and you got to be stubborn and you can't take no for an answer. And so every time I failed, I learned out why that was and what I could do better to then better help people. And also belief, right? You got to believe in what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you don't have all of those things combined, it can be a very, very challenging field to be in.
Wow, that's an incredible story that you have. And so I want to kind of say to other people out there,
Mhm.
you don't have any excuse for not making it. Like there's so many people, a lot of them were grown up as spoiled children and they have
Mhm.
all these excuses why they can't make it. And you made it all the way to like running a business, traveling the country, taking care of your
Mhm.
grandmother, all that kind of stuff after going through like a childhood that most people probably couldn't even endure and you
Mhm.
turned it into a really good thing. So like that's super inspiring. You could probably go around the country doing talks, inspiring people to get their lives together and things like that.
I do often. I like to talk to underprivileged youth. So I do a lot of those talks around the Peoria area. The school districts here are not the best. The circumstances of the children are in are not the best. So I try to share some of my story for them to have a positive impact on their life. It's your reason why. And everybody needs to find that and go after it like a rabid dog is what I always say, because
Uh-huh.
your reason why is going to drive you in life, whether that be religion or family or purpose, or just even, I've seen some people very much so succeed on the pursuit of money, right? If
Mhm.
they really go after it hard and that's all they want, then they will probably find it. But it's just your
Mhm.
reason why and how hard you're willing to go to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like people need to just go out there and make it happen, you know?
hmm Easier said than done, but yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, I think that too many people have too many excuses.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you wanted to, you got enough excuses, I would let you have them.
Yeah,
Yeah, but you didn't take your excuses and you like made yourself a great life. So like, congratulations.
I
Your
appreciate it.
grandmother must be super proud of you.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2020, but everything I do
Sorry about
past
that.
then, it's okay. Everything I do is in her honor. And
Uh-huh.
that's why we've ran the solar company the way we have. So you got to keep in mind, we've, done over 3,000 installs and we still have a 5-star reputation on across
Uh-huh.
all the boards in a hard market to tap into. And it's because we go above and beyond for our clients every single day. We're very meticulous on how we install, what their customer service looks before and after the fact. And now we're building out solar service for not only our systems, because there's been 10 to 15 companies that have done major work around our area that have gone out of business. So now we're taking on service for the consumers who don't have a system up and running. Their system went down, don't know how to access, don't know how to switch to monitoring, all those things. Our whole philosophy is just to make sure that solar has a good name in Central Illinois. And now it's to repair the reputation of solar in Central Illinois, because I can't keep up with all the guys that come in and go out.
Hmm. Wow, that's pretty inspiring. A lot of the work that I've done has been with people like workforce development type of stuff, like a lot
hmm
of my in-person classes, like PV boot camps, nonprofits will hire me to come in and teach for a week, and I'll
hmm
come in and there'll be people, that like never had a job, didn't finish high school and stuff like that. And one of the things I've noticed too is I've met some really neat people in those classes
hmm
that really are trying to turn their lives around. And another
Absolutely.
thing is I get along with them really well.
Yep.
Like I feel real comfortable in those situations with like just people that are, when they leave the class, they go home, they don't know where they're going to sleep, where they're going to eat, all that kind of stuff. But they, some of them are hardcore and they show up the next day. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've done a lot of work with the workforce development, and just including, anybody with a conviction or record.
Mhm.
As long as I can talk to you and have a serious conversation, you show up, you show out, you're respectful, and it's
Mhm.
not like a serious offense where we can't have you in the house. We work with those guys and they are internally grateful because somebody took a chance on them.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Something I always say to them is like, I believe in second chances, but you won't get a third. Because
Mhm.
sometimes they mess up, sometimes they screw up, they disappear for a couple of days. And it's like, all right, let's talk about what happened, let's figure it out. And this is your one chance.
Mhm.
And some of
Yeah.
them stick around for a very long time. And some of them, it might just be a stepping stone. Somebody believed in them, then they can go find another job where, they can prove themselves again.
Yeah, I've had a couple of students from some of those classes that I kind of like made an extra connection with them
Mhm.
and followed them. And one of them ended up getting shot, died.
Mhm.
But another guy, I know he might be looking for a job if you want me to introduce you to him. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to help them.
In fact, he's been on the podcast. His name's Neil. I'll introduce you to him. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
please do.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show.
Yeah, we have one of the guy that we had he was on the sales department or the setting department and knocking doors. And he was just so hungry, so ambitious. He was playing two different positions in high school, but surrounded by gang violence.
Hmm.
And we were able to like help him get to where he needed to be. And at the end of the day, what he was doing here wasn't the right position for him because I really wanted him to go off to college to pursue his dreams. And so
Uh-huh.
we were able to help him out and get him there and keep him away from gang violence and everything else. And it was just such a good story. And I'm just glad I can be there for people like that.
That's so awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to even think if maybe there's some way that we could work together and, help people,
That should be the goal of the whole industry, right? Like
Yeah.
solar is inherently good, but I'm, on the forefront of the industry out here with installs and sales. It can be disheartening sometimes just to see the practices of companies and the overpromising and under-delivering and just all the things that we see transpire. And it shouldn't be that way. Inherently, solar is good. It should be good for everybody, not only the installers to the sales reps to the clients. It should be reasonably priced, all the things, good equipment as well. It's
Uh-huh.
just
Yeah.
my philosophy.
Uh-huh. So you're focusing on a certain area of Illinois.
Mhm.
What kind of customers are you looking for? Is it like residential, commercial, industrial, or?
Yeah, so we are non-union, but I am very glad you're working with the unions. So when we first started out, it's a transition. We took the natural progression. We had an EPC, then bought our own materials, did subcontractors. Then, all right, well, we're done with all that. We acquired electrical contracting company, and now we do everything in-house. But one of the things we ran into with the unions is there was no really solar union. So we were having union roofers trying to do electrical work on the roof, and then we had
Mhm.
union electricians trying to do roofing work. And it just ended up being not the right thing. So I'm glad that the unions are taking that into account and really trying to educate their guys so they can touch it. But yeah, so we stay away from the industrial because that's more union territory. We stay away from schools just out of respect for them and also just less headaches for us. But yeah, residential, commercial, agricultural. I mean, we've done tons of farms, not solar farms for, community solar, but more so just farm owners
Mhm.
who run a ton of electricity through the drying bins out here or any other of the farm equipment. And yeah, customers we're looking for, we get a lot of referrals every week, every month, every year from our grateful clients. Because at the end of the day, when the power rates keep going up, somebody's complaining about their power, and we have an install in every single neighborhood in a 30-mile radius at least. So they send them our way. But yeah, now we're really tapping into commercial, I would say, with the tax credit still being available to them and us only exclusively doing ownership. We really want to make sure that we help as many business owners as possible because when the power rates double and you have small margins like they have in Illinois, it can be very challenging for them to keep in business. And I know 3 restaurants already in this year have shut down because of that.
And that's also kind of honorable too, that you're not doing leases and things like that. You're just like, people want solar, they got to buy the solar.
Hmm.
And instead of putting it through some kind of lease or power purchase agreement, which, I could definitely see the utility for that.
Hmm.
But when you're doing that, there's somebody else out there getting the tax credit, and there's just so many different hands that have to be fed money to make that happen. And they're typically like bundling together a bunch of projects and selling it to somebody on Wall Street. And then it's somebody else owns it. It's kind of a mysterious person. And, it's just like you're just doing it for, you pay me for the service and we give you the service. And I guess you must have plenty of business because I just get the feeling you're doing well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very grateful for this community that we serve and they serve us just as well. One of the parts of us is just giving back. Philanthropy is taught to all my sales guys. We're at damn near every gala, community event, social, anything that's here. It's a very philanthropic community. And we want to show up and show out and give what we can for the causes that matter to us and that matter to the community. But yeah, I completely agree with the leases. I was just looking at one the other day we also talked to a lot of realtors because we want to repair that reputation of solar and what realtors think. But yeah, she was talking about a 16 panel system, and at the end of every contract has to show what the total payout's going to be over the term. It was a 16 panel system, and the end of payout, if they kept the lease and paid the full payment and didn't buy it out at all, was $115,000 for 16 panels, and
Wow.
that's absurd. And
Uh-huh.
then one of my sales reps today is going up against the same company, but it's all the system they had designed was all in the shade. And again, keep in mind the Illinois incentive is all based on power production. So they're looking at power production. It's all in the shade, 63 panels, 4 batteries, and the payout was over $500,000. for the
Wow.
leasing company, right? And that looks good on accounts receivable. The bank's going to take you to court. You'll foreclose on your home before you get out of that situation.
Jeez.
And so we're offering, I think the net cost of the system for ownership, and it was, I think, 20 panels is all I needed out of the shade on a ground mount.
Uh-huh.
And it's like $60,000, and this net cost is going to be way less than that, 50%, but it's 60% less than that. The numbers make sense, but when you're going in and saying, hey, we're going to take care of everything, this is your monthly payment, that's where they get you. And there is some feasibility of leases across the country, but in our market, ownership is definitely the way to go if you can afford it. But if you can't afford it, there's a good chance it might not be even the best situation for you to get a lease, because we all know what happens there.
Okay, so I have a nickname for you that probably will get me canceled or something like that.
What's
But
that?
Solar Jesus.
Solar.
You kind of were like, born in a manger almost, or some kind of equivalent to that. You got the long hair. You're doing all
Yeah.
this philanthropy stuff. You're doing the right thing everywhere. So I don't know. What do you think? Will I get in trouble for that one?
It might be a little sacrilege, but I'll pivot and just say it's all because of my grandmother. I always tell
Yeah.
everyone I get my intelligence from my father, my salesmanship from my mother, and my heart from my grandmother.
Uh-huh.
So taking care of people is just in my blood.
Uh-huh.
She was the most considerate, heartfelt person, and gave more than any person would ever give to everyone around her, family, even a stranger on the street. So I learned all that from her, and it's just doing everything in her honor is the best way to put
Uh-huh.
it.
Awesome. Well, that's a great job. You're very inspiring to talk to, and I'm sure for everybody listening, we're all inspired.
Appreciate it. I hope so.
And I really enjoyed talking to you on the podcast, and I hope to meet you in person sometime, and maybe we could even figure out some way to work together to
Absolutely.
spread all the good of the sun.
Absolutely. As it should be good. It's inherently good.
Yeah, yeah. Can't be bad, right?
It depends on who spends it.
Yeah, if you're up there on Venus, you might get a little bit too much.
Yeah, right.
Great. Well, let's see. Anything else that you want to cover today?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what's from your perspective, right? So we run in different circles. What do you see is going on, the good and the bad and the ugly for the solar industry going into 2026?
Yeah, and I remember you said good and the bad and the ugly too before in the same sentence as policing. And I was like, oh, that's what we need for those bad, the unethical solar people. We'll just get Clint Eastwood out there to dirty Harry those people.
I'm not going to say no to that, to be honest.
Yeah, let's dirty Harry them. All right. And so, yeah, make my day. And so what do I see for 2026? So I am what I call a chronic optimist.
Okay.
So I'm always trying to look at the bright side of something, And so I think that everybody's super worried about these tax credits. And I think if anything, there's going to be an extra rush because people are going to try to finish things before the tax credits end.
Absolutely.
People are going to be able to adapt and pivot. And so trying to think of optimistically about getting rid of the tax credits, which I wish they wouldn't get rid of, because I like, speeding up the solar transition and all that. But by getting rid of them, you don't have to deal with all the paperwork and the leases and all that kind of stuff, which you're not already dealing with. And it's just more straightforward, less paperwork. You don't have to fill out tax forms, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully it'll help make the industry more lean, get rid of paperwork, make permitting easier, and hopefully we'll get more people on board with solar. And to get the tax credits too, there's so many different hoops you have to jump through. So perhaps that will make it a little bit easier, but they might still even renew them. I mean, I can remember that there's been tax credits since, 2006 or 8 or something like that 30% investment tax credit. And there's so many times where like it's over and then it starts up again.
Yeah, Trump's administration the first time expanded it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was like the first one that extended it for a long time was Bush.
Oh, really?
Bush Jr. Yeah, like they would just like extend it every year, just extend it, and then it's going to expire next month, and then they extended it, and so I think there's always a chance that it will get extended, but even if it doesn't, we'll be lean, we'll make it happen. There's all these other countries in the world that can survive without it, and we're going to pull it off. It's always a bump when you get rid of an incentive all at once, and it seems exaggerated because it's not just a bump down. Before that bump down, it's a bump up. when everybody's trying to finish it off. And I almost think that there might have been some kind of thought going into it, and they go like, let's make this thing expire around the midterm so we get all this good data in. Everybody's rushing to do these systems, and it looks like business is great, and then we'll get more votes for these midterm, and then we'll cut it off after that, but maybe they won't.
I hadn't thought about that, but that makes sense. That's interesting you put it that way. I completely agree. The lean industry will make room for service people to come in, electrical contractors to come in and like fix the systems that are left abandoned. And I think lean is what the industry needs as a whole, and obviously competitive with the cost of materials. Obviously the supply chains are another story, but as there's less companies out there trying to grab up everything, the cost point that the distributors are going to charge is going to be less. So it gets leaner for us, gets leaner for the consumer, and the product's still there. We're always going to be here. We've actually seen an uptick since we stopped offering the tax credit 4 months ago, because people are viewing it more as an investment. We lost net metering in January, lost the tax credit and 4 months ago for us, but obviously we're going to get everybody installed before that by the end of the year. And then, it's just more of an investment, right? You're looking into your future. You're getting this asset for your property. And I think that $20 here or there on either side of the bill with these loans, I think it's a positive thing that people are actually spending more for it, because it's something they own. They don't feel like there's this subsidy that seems obscure to them. Yeah. But I completely agree.
Great. Yeah. And we have the sun on our side,
That's still there.
And we have Solar Jesus making it happen. All right. All right. Cool. All right. So how do people find you?
Yeah, if you're in Central Illinois, to be frank, we have installs up to Chicago down to Springfield. We like to stay in a 2-hour radius around Peoria just so we can make sure our expectation and our service is there. And also suncollectors.solar is our website. 309-323-8260 is our phone number. On social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everything you can imagine. You can find us. Just look up Sun Collectors.
All right. So, let's do this again sometime. Just
absolutely
hit me up. And thanks, everyone, for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage podcast, where we just talked to William Grant of Sun Collectors over in Illinois. And if you want to get yourself NABCEP certified, which is a very good quality to have that helps you with your solar business, or just get yourself educated about solar, check out my books. I'm on my 12th book right now, writing a book on PV and the 2026 National Electrical Code. Going to be doing another one that's going to be on energy storage and the 2026 National Electrical Code, doing those books, co-authoring with Bill Brooks. Keeping really busy, doing all these podcasts, and I'm going to be teaching a PV associate class at the NABCEP conference. It's going to take place over the week of St. Patrick's Day, and we're going to be out there not too far from Illinois. We're going to be in Milwaukee, and so those conferences are going to be a lot of fun. I'll be doing the associate class over there. You can check all this stuff out. Go to my website, SolarSEAN.com, SolarSEAN.com.